We're travelling virtually to Scotland today, and we'll help you with some specific vocabulary and pronunciation features that you might hear there. There's also a special guest on the podcast to help you understand more about the way the English language is spoken in Scotland. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig and
Malcolm.
Hello, and if you're a new listener, welcome to the podcast. My name's Craig.
my name's Reza.
And my name's Malcolm.
And together with 62 years of teaching between us, including Malcolm's years, we're going to help you improve your English and take it to the next level. So I'm really pleased to welcome Malcolm to the podcast. He's an English teacher from Edinburgh, Scotland. He's also a qualified Cambridge speaking examiner, and he's been living in Sagunto, Spain since 2012. One of the reasons we've invited Malcolm on the podcast today is because of the fact that he spent some time in Edinburgh. You spent some time. Were you born in Edinburgh?
Yeah, I was born. I lived the first 20 years of my life in Edinburgh.
So would you say that's where your accent's from?
Yes.
Fantastic. That's exactly what we wanted to talk about. We've got a message from Pablo, who's originally from Madrid, although now he's living in Edinburgh. So let's listen to Pablo's message.
Hi Craig, hi Reza. My name is Pablo. I'm from Madrid, but currently I'm living in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's my second year living here. I wanted to tell you thank you very much for this amazing podcast. It's really, really helpful and funny. I would like to know if it's possible to speak about the Scottish accent, because sometimes it's a little bit hard to understand the old people, or if the people are using a lot of slang. Yes, that's it. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Well, thank you very much, Pablo, for your message. We hope you're still enjoying life in Edinburgh and you feel a bit better about understanding the Scottish accent. So can we help Pablo a little bit with some vocabulary that he may be hearing, or anybody may be visiting Scotland or Edinburgh might come into contact with?
Can I just start by asking a question? There are almost as many forms of pronunciation of the word Edinburgh as there are people. How do you say it?
Edinburgh.
How do you say it?
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. Yeah, but you hear lots of varieties. I hear people saying Edinburgh, like Americans might say Edinburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you hear so many different pronunciations of the word. So you say
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh. So you put a burra there. You don't say Edinburgh.
No.
You say Edinburgh.
Yeah.
4 syllables. Right.
He's
yeah.
saying Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
But some people say bruh, don't
Yeah,
they?
okay.
Edinburgh.
I see
Yeah,
what you're
I've
saying.
noticed that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the locals say
Edinburgh.
So we've got some basic words that I don't know if you used these, Malcolm, when you were living there. Lassie, would you say lassie rather than girl? Lassie?
Yes, it's strange that there are parts of Edinburgh that do and other parts that don't. And it also depends on who you're speaking with. If you're in a formal situation, you would probably use the word girl, or girl, as we say. But in an informal, with your friends, perhaps with your family, you would say words like lassie for girl, laddie for boy. There's lots of other words.
What would you say for baby?
We'd say the bairn, or the wean.
The wean.
The wean, W-E-A-N, which I believe is Nordic. But bairn is very, very common in many parts of Scotland, not just Edinburgh.
Okay, so we've got lassie for girl, laddie for boy, bairn for baby, and a very common word, yes.
Aye.
A-Y-E, aye. Would you hear that in Ireland?
oh yeah, a lot. Yeah. Not much in the Republic, but in Northern Ireland, yes. Generally speaking, I'd say that things that are used in Scottish English are very common in Northern Ireland. Some in Southern Ireland as well, but particularly Northern Ireland. Yeah. So we say I all the time. We don't say lassie or laddie much, but we do say wean. I've heard people say the wean for the baby.
Another word I found is hen, H-E-N. Now, I know that word for a female chicken, a hen.
Yes, indeed. But we often use it for a girl. Hi, hen. It's hello, girl. Hen. Yeah, it's another very Scotticism.
So that would be maybe, for me, from the south of England, dear or darling or love, perhaps, in an informal way.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And when people talk about the bonny banks of Loch Lomond, what do they mean by bonny?
Pretty, lovely. Yeah, you can say you've got a bonny bairn. You've got a lovely little child there. Yeah, bonny means nice.
And if I called Reza a canny teacher, what would I mean by canny? C-A-N-N-Y.
Canny, it means nice, but it's not very Scottish. I hear it more in the Newcastle area, the north of England, the northeast of England. It is used. It's not a word that I've ever used in that context. But
So
yes,
not as common as the others then?
Not as far as I know, Craig, yeah.
Right. We had a message from friend of the podcast, Carla, recently. Carla from
The Canary Islands.
Canary Islands, yeah. And she's currently in Belfast, as she said in episode 383. And notice that in Belfast they use the word wee. That's W-E-E to mean small. That's common in Scotland, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah, it's probably the most common Scottish word. We say it covertly without even realising we're saying it's something we use all the time.
So would you, even though you're teaching now and you've probably moderated your language that you use with students, for example, you might not say burn or bonny to a student, but would you sometimes forget and say, would you like a wee piece of cake instead of a small piece of cake?
Probably not. I've been away from Scotland for so long now. I've lived in different places, so I've changed my accent to fit the situation.
I think we
people
all have.
Understand me more. Yes.
We've all moderated our accents, haven't we, Reza?
Yeah.
But I bet if you got talking to other Scots or you went back to Scotland, you'd soon start saying we again.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
it would
right.
come out,
Yeah. Yes.
A thing that my grandmother would have always said, and my mother sometimes, she says, look, there's your piece. And she's talking about food. What's she talking about?
She's talking about your sandwich that you're taking to school or taking to work. That's making me laugh hearing that one.
That's peace, P-I-E-C-E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your piece.
Peace and quiet or piece of cake.
Yeah, if somebody says, what do you want in your piece? Like, what filling do you want in your sandwich?
Cheese piece.
Yeah. And the word that most listeners will know, loch, L-O-C-H, which of course is a lake.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Although it's the type of word you would only use for Scotland. If you were talking about an English lake, you wouldn't say loch, would you? So we talk about Lake Windermere, for example, in England, or what a beautiful lake in England. But if it's only for Scotland, you say loch.
Yes.
Or for Ireland, we say loch, which is spelled L-O-U-G-H. That's our variety of it.
Interesting.
So it must be like the Celtic variety.
Must be.
Of that word lake.
Yeah.
So it's the Lake Ness Monster, really. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, those are the vocabulary items that we've got, Malcolm. Before we move on to look at pronunciation, do you have any more that you'd like to mention that travellers might or listeners might find useful to know if they go to Scotland?
Indeed, yes, I have. One very, very good word in Scottish is dreich, D-R-E-I-C-H. Reza's laughing. He probably
dreich,
you recognise that
bad
word.
weather. It's a bit dreich today.
Exactly.
It's grey. It's wet. It's
sums up exactly how the weather is. Yeah, the weather is a bit dreich. Stooshy. You know stooshy?
I don't know that word.
No.
A bit of a stooshy, a bit of a mix-up, a muddle.
A mess.
A mess, a stooshy.
Can you give us a sentence?
Oof.
Craig's flat is a stooshy. Is that what something you do?
Oh, I'm in a bit of a stooshy. I don't know what to do. Yeah, it's more
a muddle.
Puzzled and muddled, yeah, than a mess. Yeah. One word I'd like to mention is the word ken. In England, for example, when people are speaking, they say something and then they'll say, you know, it's very common now. But in Scotland, many people, not again everybody, but you hear it a lot, you ken. It's amazing that from one village to another, there are completely different accents, and some are broader than others.
It sounds a little bit like can, C-A-N, but it's K-E-N?
Ken.
Ken.
You ken. And I'll tell you a story. when we first moved to Scotland, my wife's not Scottish, so where we lived, they used to have vans come round because there weren't shops nearby. And my wife asked me one day, "Who is Ken?"
Who's this guy, Ken?
Yes. Because the man in the went round in the van in the shop, he used to talk to all the neighbours and they'd say, "You Ken." And my wife was really puzzled about Ken, but she soon learned that Ken means no. Or I dinna ken means I don't know. We often use things like dinna for don't, canny for can't, winny for won't, and haveny for haven't.
Interesting.
Yeah, these are quite common, the way we speak.
By the way, if you want to see this vocabulary, you can go to the show notes where we've listed all these words and expressions. Go to inglespodcast.com/392. So if I said to you, Malcolm, thank you for coming on the podcast, you might say, nay bother.
Nae bother.
Nay bother.
Nae bother at all.
What does that mean?
No bother at all.
No bother. No worries.
No
No
worries.
problem.
Yeah, no problem, exactly. Yeah. Braw is a very common word. B-R-A-W. Something is braw. It's very good. I enjoyed the film. It was braw. It was very, very good. It's, again, a very common word in Scotland.
Can I suggest an opposite word, particularly for food or things with taste? It was mingin.
Oh, that's a lovely Scottish word. Yes.
How'd you
yes.
spell it?
How would you spell it?
Well, it's actually minging, but this is another Scotticism that miss out the final G. M-I-N-G-I-N-G, but we would actually say mingin. Something that's very bad. Oh, it's mingin, it's smelly. But on that theme, stop your greeting.
Stop your
greeting.
greeting.
Greeting, G, but again, we'd miss out the G. Stop your crying. Your face is tripping you.
Yes. You look really sad.
Yes, yeah, you're upset and angry. Your
How do you
face
spell
is
tripping?
Tripping, but
Again, you lose the G.
G,
Crippin.
yeah.
Your face is tripping you.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good accent.
I like it. I like it. I probably will start copying your accent because I love the Scottish accent. It's my favourite accent.
Really?
It really is. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we'll have some lessons after. Yeah. When I said greeting, another aspect, I don't know if you want me to continue.
Yeah. You go ahead.
Yeah.
If it gets boring, I'll cut it out. You carry on.
He's already cut it. Greeting, again, we have this glottal stop. It's very, very common in Scotland. We don't say sweetie, which is a confectionery, a sweetie. We say sweetie.
Same where I'm from. Same in London.
Yeah.
Sweetie.
Sweetie. They have the glottal stop down in the south as well, yeah. There's the famous Scottish joke where a little boy is sitting at the table with his parents and he says to his dad, can you pass the butter? And his father says, son, I don't like hearing you speak like that. It's butter. It's not butter. So the little boy rolls his eyes and the father says, repeat it. And he said, Dad, can you pass the butter? And the father said, that's better.
So how would you say this sentence in colloquial Scottish? You've got to get a lot of it.
You've got to get a lot of it.
Exactly. It's very, very similar to the estuary English where I'm from, London accent. You've got to get a lot of it.
You've got to get a lot. We miss out the final T.
Yeah. And the glottal stop comes in there. It gets stuck in the throat.
Yeah.
You've got to get a lot of it.
Got to get a lot of it. Yep.
Interesting.
Yes. We change the vowels a lot. In many parts of Scotland, they'll say, instead of saying head, they'll say heed. Instead of father, they'll say feather. Another thing that probably we've got to talk about is the letter R. People say that Scottish people roll their R's, but roll's probably not the right word. Because I don't...
You just did, though. You said roar.
Yeah.
I can't do it. Roll your R's.
Roll. But we would probably just say roll your R's. But
Soft.
in the middle of a word or at the end of a word, for example, in the south, they would say the car, but I would say car. So at the A, I put my tongue at the roof of my mouth and pronounce the R, car. Whereas you would, Craig, being from the southeast, would say car.
Car.
Without, you don't hear the R.
But does this rolling of the R, does this change depending on what area of Scotland you're in? Because is it true, this is what I always thought, the Edinburgh accent is softer than in other parts of Scotland?
They say so, yeah. The Glasgow accent is more singy. They go up and down like that. It's almost like, you probably know about Billy Connolly.
Billy Connolly?
He's the one that, they talk, a singy voice. It's nice. The accent is, there's more modulation, whereas in the Edinburgh accent, it tends to be a little bit softer.
So let's go back to this rolled R, because you mentioned the word butter before. Okay, let's each of us say these words to listen to this rolled R. Butter.
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 Bright.
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 Red.
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 Bird.
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 Yeah, it really rolled on that bird, didn't it? You really heard that R there.
We also add an I. It's like another syllable, like girl. When the two consonants come together, it's almost as if we make another syllable, girl, and world. Because the tongue is at the top of the mouth, to bring it down, you insert the I.
Let's hear it in contrast. Girl.
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 World.
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 Film.
Film.
Film, I would say.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
You're more Scottish than me, Reza.
Maybe is it?
Film.
Aren't there some people in Scotland who say film?
Yes, yeah, they would. Yeah.
Does it depend what part you come from?
Definitely. Yes, yeah.
right.
Film. Oh, yes. Maybe, yes, you would definitely hear film.
I saw a good film.
I saw a good film.
There's another thing that I read about, and that's the ooh sound, the long vowel sound ooh, is different to the ooh, the short sound. And Reza, I noticed you said this before with the word food. Now I'd say food, but you said
Food.
and you would say
Food.
so your two Belfast and Scottish vowel sounds are shorter. Food.
For me, whenever I'm trying to teach students about pronunciation and the long ooh and ooh sound, I can never do it, because for me in Belfast, our accent is the same. Mm-hmm. There's no difference. So I find it really hard to be able to identify the long and the short one.
I would concur with that, yes, yeah.
But it's so confusing for students because food has double O, F-O-O-D, but look also has double O, but it's not Luke in London, it's look.
Yes.
Would you say look?
Look.
Look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And book,
Book.
double O, but the sound. So it's really confusing. When is that double O a long vowel sound? When is it short? When is it ooh? When is it ooh?
Well, in an Edinburgh accent and a Belfast one, never.
No.
They're always short,
Short.
as far as I can see.
Yeah.
Another word for impolite is rude. How would you say rude?
Rude.
Rude.
So yours is shorter, your vowel sounds shorter than the south of England. And some Scots say no instead of not. For example, I would say it's not a problem. And is it true that you might hear it's no problem?
Exactly. Yep.
I'm not hungry. I'm no hungry.
I'm no hungry.
I'm
Yeah.
no hungry. So you forget the T. The T disappears on not.
Very common. No.
And if it's a noun, if it's no problem, you might reduce it to it's nae problem.
Or it isn't a problem.
It is nae a problem, yeah.
Yeah.
As well. So no a can reduce to nae.
Yeah.
So putting those together, let's hear the differences in this sentence. It's not a problem if you haven't got any.
It's no a problem if you haven't got any.
It's not a problem if you haven't got any.
And with my normal London accent, it will be, it's not a problem if you haven't got any.
Why, he's so posh, isn't he?
But
That's posh.
if you
No.
haven't got any.
I haven't got any.
Got any.
Got any.
Got any. See, we never do glottal stop in Belfast. We don't have the glottal stop.
Do you know?
Not really.
That
no.
surprises me.
Not really, or not as pronounced as either of you guys. Yeah.
Maybe it's not got through the backstop yet. So doing some research for this podcast, I found two expressions that I like very much. So I'm curious to know if you use them or if you've heard them, Malcolm. I'll try my Scottish accent out on you. Are we in boil your head? Which, translated into Southern English, is away and boil your head. Is that something you'd say or you've heard?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Away and boil your head. A
Away-
bit more Scottish than you, but
Away and belly your head? What does it mean? Go away.
good to go away and
But boil your head in water.
yes. It doesn't actually mean it. It's just that I'm fed up with you and go away.
Get lost.
Leave me alone. Yes.
Away and
away and boil your head.
away and boil your head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite common.
The second one I liked was your bum's out the window.
Your bum's out the window.
Your bum is out the window.
Okay.
Yeah, people in Belfast say windy for window
Windy.
as well. The windy. Yeah.
Your bum's out the window. This is get lost, forget it. When someone's talking rubbish, if I said to you, Valencia has a much better football team than Real Madrid, you might say, "Oh, your bum's out the window."
I've heard it, but it's not a common expression.
It's not a common expression.
No,
it made me laugh. I liked
I've
it.
heard it, yes.
If you had to do a little job, so not a big job, but a little job, it's probably not a good idea in Edinburgh to say that you have a wee jobby, is it?
No.
It wouldn't be a good idea. Why not?
His jobby has another significance, yes.
Jobby is what happens when you defecate, right? It's always a word I've liked. There's a wee jobby on the ground.
Yes, yes.
Wee dog's jobby.
Yes, yeah.
Dog's mess.
Dog's mess, yes, indeed.
So, Malcolm, what brought you to Spain?
In my early 20s, I did quite a bit of hitchhiking in Europe. And on one of my trips, I ended up in the north of Spain. Your listeners who are from San Sebastian will know Montegueldo. I lived in a campsite there for many months, travelled to Pamplona, Vitoria, and I actually fell in love there. I fell in love with Spain. I just loved the language, the culture, the atmosphere, and I thought, one day I'd like to come back and live in Spain. Life goes on, things change, got married, lived in London. My wife was, when I told her about my aspirations, she was quite happy. Yeah, she wouldn't mind living in Spain. We moved up to Scotland because my dad died and we looked after my mum, and then we brought up 4 children in Scotland. And when my mum died at the age of 95, we looked after her to the end. The girls had grown up, left home, and my wife said to me, "Do you fancy going to Spain now?" So after many years, I had the TEFL from when we were in London.
Teaching certificate.
Yes, and I did some teaching in London before we moved to Scotland. And I said, yeah, fine. So I started applying for jobs 8 years ago. I ended up in Galicia, worked there for a year, and we moved down to Alcalá de Henares for 3 years, and then we've been here for more than 4. Yeah, so basically I just fell in love with Spain when I was in my 20s, and I still love it. Glad to be here.
And how does living here compare to Scotland?
It's very different, Craig, in that I think the weather affects many things. For example, the Spanish people are very much outdoor people because of the weather. But in Scotland, you can't depend on the weather, even during the summer. It's so variable. You always have to have a plan B. You know, you have a barbecue fixed for a week on Saturday or next week sometime, and it's raining, so you always got to have something indoors. Whereas here, I can probably say with great conviction, let's have a barbecue on Saturday, and it's probably going to be okay.
Today's a beautiful day. It's
Yes.
lovely today, and we're in November.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible.
Wouldn't be so nice in Scotland in November.
No, but the amazing thing is that people think it rains all the time, but it doesn't. It's just unpredictable, and you can get all the seasons in one day. So the weather affects a lot, but I would say also it's much cheaper living here. Quite expensive in Scotland. Fruit and veg, even going for a coffee, going for beer, these things are much more expensive.
You have to earn a higher salary there.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, it's curious that you left Scotland, but my dad emigrated to Scotland because he was brought up in India. Then he spent a bit of time in Pakistan. The first time he ever saw the sea, he was 17 years old, and it was to catch a boat from Karachi to go to Glasgow.
Wow.
And he had never even seen the sea before.
Wow.
We're talking about the 1950s, early 50s. So people didn't fly that much. So indeed, he got a boat, a ship from Karachi to Glasgow. It would have taken several days. In those days, the boats actually went right up the Clyde, the river in Glasgow, right up to near the centre. So Malcolm's from Edinburgh. That's the other side. That's the east coast. So my dad ended up in Glasgow because he really wanted to go to Scotland. So he had never been to an English-speaking country before. And do you think it must have been tricky for him to end up in Glasgow? Glasgow, of all places?
Yes.
Because of the accent.
Yes.
I can't imagine how he managed. So start speaking English in Glasgow. And people often say that Edinburgh is easy compared to Glasgow as regards accent.
Yeah, in some parts, yeah. Wow, that's quite a challenge for him. He spoke English, though, did he?
He spoke a bit of English, but it wasn't his first language. So the English he really learned was in Scotland.
Okay.
And so he
Did he develop a Scottish accent? Or
No, he eventually, he had this kind of strange accent, a kind of Indian type accent mixed with Belfast and a slight bit of kind of Scottish in there. But it's quite funny because he learned, well, this won't mean so much to you because it was Glasgow he lived rather than Edinburgh. But I'm sure you know some very famous streets in Glasgow,
yes,
such as Sucky Hall Street.
Yeah.
And my father continued to mispronounce it to the end of his days because all the people that he mixed with at the time, mostly Indians till he got to know local people, they said, and Sucky Hall Street, things like that. So I remember going from Suchi Hall Street to Buchanan Street, which of course is Buchanan Street. And I found it quite amusing that he still kind of learnt the wrong words and they stuck, even though he lived in Scotland for about 4 years because he studied there. So his plan was to go to Scotland, not to emigrate, but to study at university. But he loved it so much that he decided to stay. So that's the effect that Scotland had on my dad. He decided to stay in the UK. And he eventually ended up in Northern Ireland. But it was Scotland that first attracted him. So I always feel that Scotland has a very important role to play in my family.
I'm sure you feel that, yeah.
I've heard that when they speak English rather than Gaelic, rather than Scottish, when they speak English in the islands, it's actually a very soft accent, very smooth lilt to it, not hard at all. Is that true?
It's quite nice, actually. One of my daughters is married to a guy whose mother is from the Hebrides. Her and her family have got a lovely Scottish accent, nice and gentle and soft. Yes, that's true.
We might use that word lilt, L-I-L-T.
LT.
It's kind of a softly, sweetly moving kind of up and down accent in a pleasant way.
That's correct, yeah.
A bit like people from Galicia in a way.
Yes, exactly. They got a lilt, haven't they?
Uh-huh.
Whereas Glasgow, like Belfast, is more kind of associated with a harsh accent.
Harsh means fuerte, strong.
Hard and
hard.
strong
Stronger.
and angular, not smooth.
Yeah, but there's so many variations within all different parts. It's quite incredible, really.
Here's a question that I think some of the listeners might be curious about, Malcolm. How often do you wear a kilt, if at all?
I've only worn a kilt 4 times in my life as my daughter's weddings. 4
Really?
daughters, 4 kilts.
So have you got a family tartan, family colours?
I don't know. My surname's not Scottish. And I don't have a kilt. I've got to hire one. And it's a bit of a fallacy. Many people used to think that all Scots wore kilts. But for weddings, for celebrations, or for parties maybe, or festivals, they'll maybe wear a kilt. But it's not
common.
It's not common around the streets of Edinburgh. No, you might get a few eccentrics as well, but no.
So if you go to Edinburgh, don't expect to see men walking around in kilts.
No.
Malcolm, are there any things that you should never say to a Scottish person that might offend him or her?
I think the most common one is when people parody the Scottish accent and say, "Och aye, the noo," which is something we never say in Scotland. You might say "och aye," and you might use a sentence, say, "I'll do it the noo, do it the now." Again, I would never say that.
So new means now?
Now means now, but sometimes there's a bit of a parody. They say, "Och aye, the noo." Another thing you should never say is Scotland part of England?
I knew you would say that, yeah. It's a classic, isn't it?
Yes, which part of England is Scotland in? Yes, that really gets Scottish people going. Another thing you shouldn't say is, my girlfriend's uncle lives in Glasgow. Hector, his name. Do you know him?
Oh, Hector. Oh, aye.
Yeah.
Oh, aye.
Forgetting that, is Glasgow the second biggest city in the UK? or the third.
It's the biggest in Scotland.
Yes.
Oh yeah, but it's one of the biggest in the UK. It's in the top 3 or 4.
Is it? I don't know.
It's a big city.
It's big,
so
certainly.
people aren't going to know each other. It's like saying, "Do you know my friend in Birmingham?"
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yes, yeah. Where can I get a deep fried Mars bar?
Let me give you some information on that. So many people think that many people in England think that many Scottish people eat everything that's deep fried in oil, particularly a Mars bar. So a Mars bar, the chocolate sweet that you can buy, deep fried. But that's not true, is it, Malcolm?
I've never seen one, never eaten one, but it's become a bit of a joke. Yeah. And maybe the last one, what do you wear under your kilt? That's such a common thing that people ask you.
What did you wear under your kilt?
My response to that is always socks and shoes.
Very good.
Although you can tell a lot if you put your hand under a Scots kilt. If it's a quarter pounder, he's a McDonald.
Malcolm, do you feel more Scottish or British? What's your identity as you see it?
That's a difficult question. I am Scottish, but I'm British as well. Yeah, I don't feel probably a little bit more Scottish. Yeah, but British. Yeah, it doesn't faze me too much. Not as much as many Scottish people.
How would you describe the average Scottish person's relationship with England? Is it love? Is it hate? Is it a bit of both? What is it?
Again, it varies from person to person. A lot of Scottish people are anti-English. I'm not in any way. I mean, I lived in London for many years and a lot of my friends are English. But there is a lot of animosity towards the English because they get the feeling that England feels that they're superior. The BBC, British Broadcasting, but it's basically English. All the news is English, generally. Yeah, there's quite a bit of bitterness up in Scotland.
Is it kind of like a love-hate relationship? Like there's a lot in common and a lot people love about England, but at the same time they resent things?
There's a bit of a resentment.
Love-hate, is it? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe it's similar to Britain and France.
Every country has it, don't they? Yeah. And even within towns, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Sagunto, Puerto Sagunto, it happens all over the world.
And now it's your turn to practice your English. Do you have any comments or questions about today's podcast? We would love to hear from you and listen to your messages. You can send us a voice message by going to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. Reza, how can people contact us by email?
If you'd prefer to write, you could write to Craig. He's at craig@inglespodcast.com or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're listening to this podcast on the day it was published, you are still in time to get the special Black Friday or Cyber Monday deal of 50% off all Mention Ingles courses. Go to store.mentioningles.net because tomorrow, if you're listening to the podcast when it was released, is the last day.
As ever, we'd like to give a big thank you to all of you who help us by donating money voluntarily to the Patreon scheme. That's Patreon. If you're interested, have a look at the show notes. Go to the show notes and you'll see the link to patreon.com/Ingles podcast. And for as little as $1.20 per month, the 20 is to pay VAT. People donate money, and as a thank you, we give them access to all the recent audio transcriptions of the podcast. So if you're interested, have a look at the link.
And we can't thank all of you individually, but we would like to say thank you for the recent Patreon supporters who have joined us, and they are David Santana Rubiales, Andres Santana, Manuel Macho, Maria Teresa Moreno Garcia, Mario Tagle, Alberto Valesco Nina, Maria Alcantara Vargas, and Roberto Massini. And last, but by no means least, Marive. Thank you very much to all of you. Reza, what's next week?
next week, we're going to focus on the pronunciation of OUGH.
Look forward to that next week. Malcolm, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a Bonnie podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. Appreciated being able to come in and share with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Until next time, have a wonderful week. It's goodbye from Reza.
It's goodbye from Craig.
And it's goodbye from Malcolm.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.